Hey, I'm Kelly Loy, the shorts programmer at Toronto Real Asian International Film Festival. Welcome to this Q&A session for the shorts program, Film Frenzy. I cannot wait to get started to chat with all of our amazing guests from the films in this program. But before we get started, I'd like to thank the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office Toronto and Consulate General of the Republic of Korea in Toronto for their support in presenting this Q&A session. The participation of the filmmakers and talent were made possible with support from the CBC. During this session, feel free to drop your questions for the films in the questions box just above the chat. It's like that dark black box, so drop it in. And if you're on your phone, you can scroll down and find it below this video. You can also join in on the ongoing discussions on our Real Asian Film Forum Discord server. Once you've read through the welcome note, the welcome code of conduct message, click on the green checkmark icon and you'll be able to unlock the other threads. Finally, Real Asian strives to create a safe and accessible online space for people to gather. Our festival code of conduct can be found on our website at realasian.com/code of conduct. And we encourage you to read it and give it your support. So without further ado, I'd like to start with our first guest for the film Bow Wow. So let's welcome up director Park Hyung-nam and also our interpreter, Gina. Very excited. Hello, welcome. Sorry. So thank you for joining us. Sorry, that's also Summer. I want to introduce Summer, who also worked on the film. And they're joining us from Seoul. So right now it's very late. It's midnight. So thank you so much for joining in.
늦었는데도 와주셔서 감사합니다.
감사합니다.
Thank you.
So to start, again, thank you so much for sharing such a daring and refreshing film. There's no doubt that, this film was like an ambitious vision, but definitely one filled with a lot of heart. And like we've previously talked before, and you mentioned that this film was pitched to you by the writer, Jung-min Kim, who you've worked with before. So I actually was kind of curious, with such a big project, do you mind sharing what kind of drew you into making this film happen and working on it?
이렇도록 대담하고 신선한 영화를 공유해 주셔서 감사합니다. 이 영화가 야심찬 비전이라는 것에 의심할 여지도 없고 참 많은 사랑을 품고 있는 영화임에도 분명합니다. 전에 우리가 대화했을 때 이 프로젝트는 전에 같이 일했던 김정민님께서 피칭을 하셨다고 했는데요. 혹시 어떤 점이 이 커다란 작품을 만들게 되셨는지 관객자분들께 나눠주실 수 있나요?
네, 일단은 강아지가 나오는 뮤지컬 판타지 영화라는 점이 가장 흥미로웠고 그 지점이 이제 새로운 도전을 하도록 만들어서 참여하게 됐고요. 이 영화를 만들게 됐고요. 강아지들은 그렇게
먼저 말씀해 주세요.
이거
It was the fact that it was a musical fantasy film with dogs that interested me, and it made me challenge something new.
답변이 다 됐나요? 질문이 더 있었나요?
아니 계속 대답해 주시면 돼요.
한 문장씩 끊어서 얘기해.
나머지 질문이 또 뭐였죠?
아니야, 그냥 너 이대로 하면 돼.
이거?
그 어떤 점이 이 작품을 만들게 되셨는지 안 그러면
그거는 아까 답한 대답입니다. 요거는 질문
Oh, okay, awesome. Oh, that's great. Actually, I'm just going to skip to this other question in my lineup. So my fellow programmer, Aram, he was talking to me and was telling me that like musicals have such a huge presence and following in Korea. So I'm curious, is this film your first foray into musicals? And if so, or if not, what what is kind of your interest for musicals, and what was the significance of having the music as part of this film?
제 동료인 프로그래머가 한국에서 뮤지컬이 아주 인기가 많고 마켓이 있다고 하는데 이것이 이 뮤지컬의 첫 입성이신가요? 그리고 이 스토리에서 뮤지컬의 중요함이 무엇인가요?
시장 규모에 있어서는 뭐 브로드웨이나 웨스트엔드랑 비교할 수는 없겠지만 한국에서도 뮤지컬이 인기가 많고 그리고 시장도 점점 커지고 있고요. 또한 아직 뮤지컬 영화라는 장르가 생소한 편이지만 최근에 개봉을 앞둔 상업 두 편의 뮤지컬 상업 영화가 있는데 그게 잘 되면 뮤지컬 영화라는 장르의 새로운 지평을 열 수 있지 않을까 그런 생각을 하고 있고요. 바우와우 같은 경우에는 제 세 번째 단편 영화이자 그리고 세 번째 뮤지컬 영화입니다. 네, 그래서 제 전작들도 좀 소개가 되면은 되게 좋았을 텐데 좋을 것 같고요. 그리고 뮤지컬 음악의 중요성은 음악은 일단은 언어를 넘어서 사람들을 감동시키고 꿈과 판타지로 이끄는 힘이 있다고 생각을 해요. 그래서 이 이야기에서 음악은 우리를 판타지 세계로 들어가도록 도와준다고 생각을 합니다. 이상입니다.
So the market capacity can't be compared to Broadway or the West End, but the musicals are popular in Korea, and the market is getting bigger. Also, a musical movie is still unfamiliar in Korea, but the next two commercial musical movies, which is about to release soon, might open a new horizon for the musical movie as a genre in Korea. And Bow Wow is actually my third short and my third musical film. So it would be really nice if the previous musical films could be introduced as well. And music transcends language and has the power to move one's emotionally and leads them to dream and fantasy. So I think music helps us go into the world of fantasy and stories.
Oh, that was thank you for sharing such a thoughtful response. I'm going to actually on that, just because of time, we have a lot of audience Q&As that I'm going to move into. And I think not just about the music, but a huge part of the film features the dogs who are the stars of the show. And so I think on the one hand, there's curiosity about who are these dogs? How did you work with them? And we even have questions around wondering whether the characters were originally conceptualized in the script or if the characters evolved during the process of filming. And is there a specific reason why the pug was chosen for the role as Mix?
이 강아지들에 대한 관심이 참 많은데요. 그 강아지들과 어떻게 일했는지, 그리고 그 강아지들과 일하다 보면서 캐릭터들이 점점 변하고 발전했는지, 그리고 어쩌다가 그 퍼그가 제일 중심 인물이 됐는지.
강아지들이랑 일하는 거 되게 흥미롭고 진짜 도전이었고요. 그 강아지들이 훈련된 연기견들이고요. 그리고 최근에 그 봉준호 감독님의 기생충에도 등장한 강아지들이에요. 그래서 훈련된 연기견들이고, 그리고 아쉬운 점이 조금 있다면 그 세 마리가 동시에 이제 연기를 하는 장면이 있었는데, 근데 한 마리씩 이제 연기를 했을 때는 그 아이들이 이제 잘 해주다가 이제 세 마리가 동시에 나오니까 애들이 어떤 그런 것들을 연기를 집중을 못 해가지고 그게 그런 장면이 있었는데 세 명이 같이 나오는 장면을 어쩔 수 없이 못 찍어서 없어졌고요. 네, 일단은 여기까지. 네.
It was very interesting and challenging. And they were actually trained acting dogs that actually appeared in director Bong Joon-ho's Parasite. So one regretful point was that the three dogs were acting all at once scenes at one time. And what was challenging was that when one dog would appear, it was really great. But when other dogs appeared at the same time, they would get distracted. So we had to cut some scenes on that. So that was kind of like the regretful point.
네, 그리고 퍼그가 왜 믹스 그 주인공이었냐면은 뭐 다른 사람들은 그렇게 생각을 안 하는데 저는 그 강아지를 보고 그 배우를 먼저 이제 사람 배우를 먼저 캐스팅을 했는데 이제 그 사람 배우랑 최대한 닮은 사람으로 이제 강아지들을 이제 찾았어요. 근데 딱 그 강아지 보자마자 저는 그 배우 믹스 역할에 남자 배우랑 되게 닮았다고 저는 생각을 하는데 또 다른 사람들은 그렇게 생각은 안 하더라고요.
Why the pug was the main character was because I picked the main actors first, like the human actors first. And then when I saw the pug, he looked like the main actor. And a lot of people didn't think that way, but I thought the pug looked like the main character. So that's why I chose the pug as the main character.
That is great. And actually, before we wrap up, I have to say, I know I seem kind of composed here, but I'm very excited for this Q&A section. I've been talking about this film since the summer. And we do have some very amazing audience responses to the film. So I want Mimi and Josephine to queue up 2 films that I received from some fans of your work. And so can we play those now?
이게 제가 사실은 되게 지금 되게 얌전한 것 같지만 사실은 여름부터 너무 이 영화에 대해서 너무 신나 있는 상태였고, 그리고 지금 미미를 통해서 다른 관련된 2 영화를 보여드리고 싶대요.
Meow, 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 meow.
So oh, sorry. That was a parody of Bow Wow.
Bow Wow.
Mong, 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 bow, wow, wow, wow.
So I am, for anyone who's listening or anyone who's here, we are starting a Bow Wow challenge, #Bow Wow challenge. Anyone who has pets, you need to watch this film and you got to try to see if you can get your pet to do some Inception.
It will be so thankful if you guys email us that movie, because we really want to share with our crews. Thank you so much for your guys' videos.
Thank you. And we're going to have more. So anyone, please join the Discord. That's where we're going to be collecting these videos. Yeah, I look forward to seeing more. Thank you for joining us. And thank you, Gina, for interpreting.
Thank you so much.
감사합니다.
감사합니다.
Okay, next up from Jakarta, we have Indira Iman. Welcome.
Hi.
Hey, thank you. Also tuning in late from your end. Indira is the director of Wrong, and I'm so happy that you're able to be here with us.
Happy to be here.
Great. So yeah, I just wanted to say, honestly, it doesn't matter how many times I watch your film. I just find the film is like always so terrifying and satisfying, and that never changes for me. And I thought it was like extremely interesting to consider not just only like the supernatural elements as what is like, as the horrifying elements to the film, but also the existence of violence and harm that manifests for women on a daily like basis. So I think I wanted to get started with just like knowing more about you as a filmmaker. And you mentioned in your bio that you were previously a medical student.
Yeah.
So now that you're a filmmaker, can you share how you came to film and why horror?
So basically, I about 5 years ago, I was a medical student. I went to med school for 4 years, I think, but I didn't graduate because I watched more films than I read anatomy books, stuff like that. So I just kind of I just kind of discovered my passion back then. So it was kind of a difficult time, and I think I was lucky enough to be able to have the chance to switch uh, to filmmaking at that time, because my parents are also supportive of it. So I'm very thankful for that chance, and I think they're very happy because with all the things going on with me, uh, I'm s- I'm just I just became a filmmaker for 3 years now, I think. So I came to this is actually my first horror film. Uh, how did I came to the horror genre? I think because living in Indonesia, I think mysticism, supernatural elements are very close to my everyday lives, since our indigenous beliefs and traditions are rife with them. And most Indonesians are also a bunch of very religious and superstitious people. So I think growing up here, horror and the fantastics are something that naturally draws me. I think that's also why horror as a genre is always popular in Indonesian cinema. Like, Indonesian cinema has seen many ups and downs, but one thing for sure is horror remains a staple genre here. So I think that's why.
That's actually, yeah, I think that's like interesting to know. And kind of hopping off of that, even though like horror is established genre, I think your film does something different. It definitely reclaims horror in a different way, subverts the horror tropes. And so I'm kind of curious to know, like for you, what did it mean to, one, create this horror film, and then two, use horror as a way to tell really important social issues and stories. And sorry if I'm adding all the questions, but I'm also curious, what are your hopes for horror, even as an established genre? Like, where do you hope to see it?
First, what the film means for me, I think Wrong is something of a revisionist fan fiction for me, because it takes heavy inspirations from the 70s and 80s Indonesian horror, where the protagonist is usually a dead woman who obtains supernatural powers to seek revenge to those who wrong her. So, and these women are usually sexual assault victims. But since Indonesia at that time was basically still in a dictatorship, patriarchal structure is still heavily imposed even in films. And the film is also rife with the male gaze, misogynistic undertones. So these powerful women are never triumph at the end. They are always seen as a threat to traditional family values, to religion. So they're always defeated by religious men at the end. So that's something I want to change in my film. Like, it sucks because women can't win even when they're already dead. So I want to change that in my film. And for me, that's also why I took filmmaking, because I want to make films about the stories and the women that I rarely see on screen and I haven't seen on screen. So uh, the questions are quite a lot.
Yeah, it's okay. You're doing great.
So my hopes for the horror genre, especially for Indonesia, I think I hope the stories within the genre becomes more diverse, since Indonesian horror films have a tendency to follow trends. Like, if someone has a successful haunted house horror, everyone will do it. And most Indonesian films are, I think, still supernatural horror, and I want to see more kind of horror in the genre. And I also hope Indonesian filmmakers are more willing to use horror as a mean to explore traumas and problems in Indonesian society, and not void of social context. I hope that.
No, that's great. I'm asking so many questions because I'm like just so very excited for this film, and I'm sorry if I'm like my over eagerness is like, let's fit all the questions in like 5 minutes. But actually, something that you mentioned into your your previous answer about wanting to show kind of like have more representation on screen. I want to like take note also at the beginning of the film, like we come across like various nighttime scenes in Jakarta, and we like see just like different kinds of interactions and navigation of different bodies moving through that space. Do you mind sharing a bit more about your intention behind filming those locations, and what were some considerations behind that doing so?
So basically, I want to showcase the sides of Jakarta and Indonesia that you don't often see anywhere on screen. Indonesia, I think, is a country that likes to put up a pretty face. Like, we have beautiful beaches, we have rich and diverse culture, we have our cities are developing, but I think it's only partially true. The sex workers that you see in the film have to work side by side with the rail tracks because they are displaced in the name of development and religious intolerance. We pride ourselves with our diverse culture, but we neglect these traditional artists, dancers to the point they're the only street ronggeng group left in Jakarta. And also, I think these women who work in the nightlife scene is quite. These women work in the nightlife scene, which is quite literally unregulated by any laws. It's a very risky job with no protection. So, and people often shame and blame women who works nightlife jobs in Indonesia. So, I kind of want to highlight that in my film.
Yeah, thank you for sharing such like I think that's like a whole other conversation that we have to have later. But I do have an audience question that I want to kind of ask you now. So our audience member asks, how did you decide on the costume or the dresses for the film? What inspired you?
I think for the costume, for the Ronggeng character, of course, it was inspired by the traditional Ronggeng attires, the kebaya, sanggul, the hairpiece, and everything. But when she was still a woman, a regular woman, I think I was inspired by nothing actually. It's just it's a simple dress. We chose red because red represent desire, anger. I think that's how we choose the costumes.
Great. I think that kind of brings us to the end of our section together. Thank you, Indira, for joining us. And for folks, like, please check out the films in this program. They're great. And yeah, I think we're going to have to welcome our next guest. We'll talk soon, Indira.
Yeah.
Bye. All right. Next up, we have Linhan. Sorry, wow. Linhan Zhang from the film Last Ferry from Grass Island. Welcome. And Linhan is joining us from New York.
Thank you.
So I want to start by opening with the opening text to your film. Hong Kong is made up of over 250 islands, and among them is Grass Island, situated near the border of Shenzhen, China. Like I'm sure like many of us, when we think about Hong Kong, we just like imagine this urban environment of just skyscrapers and technology, shopping, just like a whole bunch of other things that we actually do not see ever in the film. So I'm kind of curious to know, can you share what your connection is to this place called Grass Island, and how did this story come up from it?
Sure. A few years back, when I was, it was summer, and I just finished making a short film for my school with my classmates, some of my friends. So to celebrate, we took a boat trip out to the to the islands in the south of Hong Kong. It's just sort of like as a way to relax and celebrate. And what really struck me at the moment was when we look at Hong Kong, as we stand in the city, we always have to look up, and we are marveled at the sort of concrete skyline that the architects have built for us. But when you're on a boat and you're kilometers away from all of that sort of man-made distractions, all you can see really is the all these islands just surrounding you everywhere. And it was sunset, and there was a little fisherman boat with somebody fishing in there. It's very picturesque. So that was the moment that it dawned on me that not just me, but a lot of Hong Kong filmmakers before me have been focused on the city for so long that we forget to explore the sort of rural and rustic side of Hong Kong that really makes up the majority of its area. And so with that in mind, I've set out to find my dream island and decided to make a story out of it. So I didn't really have a script in mind. When I was scouting, I was kind of hoping to be inspired by the island because I don't really know much about them. So I don't want to impose my vision. And we looked at a few dozen islands, and I think the moment I stepped on Grass Island, it hit me in a way that that I could see the story happening immediately. There's not much for me to add because I can. It seems as if like another world has just opened in front of me, a side of Hong Kong that's hidden, that I've never discovered before. So it's just the process of excavating the story instead of inventing something for me.
Yeah, I think that's kind of interesting to think about because, you know, your film, it is a visual treat. It's like so beautiful to watch. And as you mentioned, it's like an often unseen part of Hong Kong. I mean, thinking about even like, you know, when I was telling my parents about this film, my parents are from Hong Kong. They're there. Like they're also not very familiar with Grass Island. But I think even more so than thinking about like visually what you were able to capture and share about this place, I was really moved by the sound. The soundscape in your film was like so like well done. I mean, the script itself, the dialogue is very restrained. There's not much, but I think you just like the way that we see our characters move through the space, we're also seeing it through listening to what they're experiencing, and you just kind of create this environment of this island, and it's like I feel like a whole different kind of narrative. So can you kind of share like what considerations that you took when crafting the soundscape of the film, and are there any like specific sounds from the film that you really want us to pay attention to?
Sure. Like I said, as soon as I step on the island, it's created a very strong impression for me. And and a huge aspect of it being the natural sound, the ambient sound I can hear as soon as I arrived. You can imagine coming from a downtown of the metropolitan Hong Kong and going out to an island. It's in a way sort of like a detox for your ears. Suddenly you feel like you can hear a lot more nature sound than you could in the city. So it was always in the beginning when I was discussing audio with my recorder. It was less about how do we invent even greater soundscape, as we often have to do in cleaning up if we are filming in the city. But it's rather about how we can try to take in as much ambient sound as possible, because by nature themselves, it is already a very they have a very beautiful balance. The sound of crickets, the dogs in the distance, and you can hear every household cooking because you can hear them frying in the open air kitchen. I think thinking back to like the Hong Kong films in the 1980s and 90s, a lot of them were dubbed for very practical reasons, simply because Hong Kong is such a noisy city, and shooting on the island really is a privilege because we're able to go around it and in a way create a more authentic soundscape.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I also want to add that actually someone in our audience just wanted to say the sound design of The Last Ferry from Grass Island was breathtaking, and then heart emoji. So wanted to share that with you. I think we have enough time for like one more question. So before this Q&A, I was just like watching all the films again, and this time around, I really picked up the moments of care and tenderness in your film. I think it's quite interesting just because, it's centered around, this retired hitman who's now living on this island. And like all the kind of scenes that we see on screen, like visually, are scenes of care. And the violence all happens outside of the camera. So I was just kind of curious to hear your thought process when you were creating maybe your characters and like thinking through like what you want to show, what you didn't. And sorry, just to add on to this question, because I'm like, I need to ask everything I want to. There's also this sense of nostalgia I feel in the film. There's like these intergenerational relationships from teacher to apprentice, mother, son, this island that is seemingly like not part of, present day Hong Kong narrative. So I was also curious to know if that was like something intentional, and if so, like, how do you understand the role of nostalgia? So sorry, they're kind of like very different questions, but kind of see them together.
I'll try to piece them together. One of the questions I asked when I was designing the character is, who would, in this day and age, still choose to live on Grass Island, which is inherently a very, it's not a convenient place to live compared to downtown or in the city. So to me, I think one of the more intuitive answer is somebody who's trying to run away or hide from something, who choose to renounce his or her sort of material life. And at that time of research, I was watching a lot of hitman movies, the ones made in the 80s and 90s by Johnny To, by John Woo. They're really the grandmasters of hitman genre. And it occurred to me that these really cool, suave characters who went out gun blazing, cared about brotherhood more than anything. These heroes we see on screen back then, by now they probably have reached the age where they retired and they're no longer really functioning in that sense of assassination. So maybe they are the characters who, for very obvious reasons, safety, would choose to retire somewhere else. So I think in a way it hit two really it hit two targets for me. One is, in a way, I can make a tribute to this Hong Kong hitman genre that sort of faded away over time, and in a way I can perhaps revive this universe a little bit and extend its lifespan to this year. What would these retired hitmen be doing if they haven't been killed? Are they going to be, so this is sort of like what I imagined. Another thing I really wanted to explore is, because we've seen them, they killed so many people in those movies. It is almost like a cool thing. Like, we worship this kind of killing. I wonder by the time they retire, do they feel is there any guilty, or is there any humanity left within them? Because they care so much about brotherhood. So I feel like, in a way, they have a very strong moral compass. But will this moral compass sort of revert to like what a civilian's moral compass would be? So the idea to have a ama, whom I don't really try to explain the relationship between the hitman, whom he takes care of so diligently and with love, maybe in a way is sort of like atonement for the things he has done before. So maybe it's like a modern day of like a monk choosing to exile himself because of whatever reason. I just thought this is a very interesting character study. And then out of nowhere, we throw in another conflict, a younger version of himself. And then from there on, we see how it plays out.
Wow, thank you so much for like generously answering both of those questions at the same time. This does bring us to the end of our time together, Linhan, but thank you so much for joining. And again, folks who are watching, please watch the film. As mentioned, it's a visual and, just like a sensory treat in general. And yeah, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, last but not least, we have two very, very special guests. We have Kevin, the director of Receiver, and we have the lead, Tahirih, joining us today from Toronto. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about this film. I think not to speak on behalf of our viewers and potential ones, I'm sure we were all very captivated by like how conceptually strong this piece was and how important it was to really shed light on issues of labor, performativity, and violence that manifest in informal and informal spaces. For women of color, especially and when we're thinking about caregiving. So just to start, let's get right into it. Can you speak to the intention behind creating the film a bit more? And Tahirih, can you I know on your end, you did such a great performance, but can you also share a bit what kind of drew you to this film and to this role?
Okay, well, I guess I probably have to start.
Yeah.
So a lot of the genesis of this project comes from my girlfriend, Stephanie, who's a social worker. And at the time that Luke Higginson, my co-writer, and I were starting to develop Receiver, Steph was actually working as a telephone counselor. And through her experiences and getting to see them secondhand, admittedly, I got to really see the level of emotional labor and empathy that was kind of demanded by both her employers and also her clients. And the more Luke and I kind of started to explore that, the more it sort of scared us. It presented a slate of fears and dangers that arose from the whole concept of the commodification of empathy, which, if we're being honest, is sort of the core bedrock of the modern social work industry. You know, the more we commodify somebody's empathy, the more we open them to that empathy being weaponized against them. And when we kind of took a big bite out of that idea, it became really clear to us that Receiver wanted to be a psychological horror film. And then it became the matter of sort of tailoring it towards that genre in a way that we could still bring forward those sort of social themes into what we were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, what drew me to doing this project was, you know, the beautifully crafted script by Cavan and by Luke, and seeing on page this depiction of this character, as Cavan was mentioning, with such high levels of empathy, who just truly wants to like help other people through their struggles, but is so contrasted by her own inability to cope with her own pain and take care of her own self. And like, we often don't get to see these marginalized women of color caregivers depicted on the screen in these roles, especially in a thriller. So all those factors, and my cat is now entering the screen. All those factors made it a fantastic project that really drew me to the role.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, this segues really well into our first audience questions. So for Tahirih, someone wants to say, first, congratulations on a brilliant performance. Is this your first role in a horror thriller? And how did you prepare for such a convincing performance when you did not have your fellow actors in front of you? And sorry, this also leads to a question for Cavan. What were the challenges of directing actors who are not performing in the same space?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Yeah, so this is my first ever horror thriller that I've ever been in. Funnily enough, I grew up not watching horrors and thrillers because my mother never let me watch anything scary. So I actually think a lot of these things were very genuine reactions because I was genuinely scared at times. But in regards to the preparation for the role, I deep dived into watching some current thrillers. I watched It. I watched The Haunting of Hill House, Get Out, Parasite. A lot of these, she just keeps jumping back in. A lot of these kind of thrillers, just to kind of get the tone and feel and mood of what would be required of the role, but also understanding what it means to work as a social worker and work for 211. So I had a lot of meetings with Stephanie, Cavan's partner, who worked at 201 as a social worker, and really kind of dived into what that work and life entails, and really trying to see it from or through her eyes. So it was a combination of those things, and being able to prepare for it without the actors. The thing is, and Cavan can speak to this a bit more too, was he had thought about this in advance, and actually we had the actors offset, so they weren't, I guess, ADR'd in later. They were on set with me as we were going through it, because essentially this was like a chamber short film following me the entire time. So having to, having the other actors just offset and responding with them kind of really helped the trajectory and build for the character. It would have been a lot harder had they not been on set. Not that it wouldn't have been doable, but I think it really, really helped the performance and the storytelling aspect to have all those off-screen actors there as we were shooting.
I think Tahirih just answered my question better than I could have. Basically, there were no additional challenges because I fought really hard from the very beginning to make sure that all of our off-screen actors were going to be there on set and able to perform live, which, as Tahirih alluded to, I think really strengthened all of the performances across the board. But it also sort of helped the Cavan Campbell, who's a producer, because it also saved a lot of money, because I didn't have to book any sound studio time to NDR, pre-performers at the end of production. So.
That's great. Actually, on that, something that Tahare brought up about just like, you know, like genuine reactions of like feeling scared and terrified. I'm kind of curious, was there any kind of like, what were some care practices that were brought on set, and ways that maybe as a step, like as cast and crew together, that the story was collaborative, and like, you know, ways to kind of decompress, because it is a, you know, it is a psychological thriller, but it's also very real for many folks. So
yeah, for sure. I think what kind of helped create that safe space leading into it was kind of the rehearsal and the prep days that we had in order to kind of unpack all the issues that we were dealing with. And then I think for myself as well, having just spaces to decompress, whether it was just going and listening to music to either help prep or get out of a certain role, that was kind of very useful for me as I was building to the climax of it, because we pretty much shot everything sequentially. And so by the time we got to that moment that you see from Sriani to the double and switching to that part, being able to kind of get out of that headspace of that, you know, intense fear that Sriani is experiencing, or the horror of what's going on, and then step into the role of the double, being able to kind of decompress and have my other castmates there to kind of help support. Someone else who was there, Mina James, who played the double, was there in the process of the rehearsals and helping to craft everything. And I leaned on her, and she was a good support for me as I had to transition from that height and that climax from one character into the next. And so I think having built that trust and built that relationship in the rehearsal up until we shot it was very important for taking on the weight of both those roles.
Yeah, and if I can just tack on a little bit to that, I was working with two phenomenal co-producers on this, Sedna Fiati and Emily Andrews. Sedna in particular is a really big supporter of, as of course all three of us are, of having representational film sets and trying to push forward technicians and artists from marginalized groups and giving people a space to actually do work in what was traditionally a very white and male-dominated industry. And so we made it our goal from the very beginning to actively recruit as many people of color and women as we possibly could. We had greater than gender parity in the production of Receiver. There were more women than men making this film, and we had a huge number of people from Asian backgrounds and other minority backgrounds. So that was also a big sort of bedrock moment for us, that everybody kind of comes on set and sees a very diverse makeup of the people who are going to be working on the film, and automatically creates a space where everybody has to think a little more carefully and be a little more respectful. Not to say that we were humorless or didn't have the chance to have fun, but it created this dynamic where everybody was just a little more aware of everybody's experiences on set, because there was such a wide range of experience levels from the individuals who were helping us make the film. And that was something that we very actively engaged in, and I'm really glad we did. I think it made the film, the act of production, something special, because I mean, production's really, really stressful at the best of times. And knowing that there was a group of people who were all there who were just having fun and everybody felt supported took a huge amount of weight off my shoulders as a producer and also as a director, at what amounts to a really stressful time anyway. So not to make this about my own comfort, but I think it was I think for me, that was the bellwether of feeling like we were doing it correctly, because my worries about how is the crew getting along were vanishingly small on this, because of the tremendous and diverse slate of collaborators that I had helping me make this film.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, both of you. I think it's important that it's not just the film as a final product that shares a message, but it's also the process behind. And I know that's often, like, for us on the other end at a film festival, we see the film, but there's also so much that goes behind the scenes and so much work and equity that needs to be, like, continuously, like, fought for. So thank you for for sharing that. And we are at the end of the segment, and I want to bring all of our other guests up. But there was a question I'm very curious about, the hypnotism, and I think I'm going to just have to save that for the Discord. So for folks, we had to cut this Q&A short, but join us on the Discord because I'm going to ask Kevin and Tahare to learn more about, hypnosis. So can we now bring up all of our amazing guests back into this room? I'm very excited because this is the first time I get to speak with all of the filmmakers and guests together. So thank you for sticking around. Okay, so, as a group discussion, I don't have anything super meaningful to ask, but here at Real Asian, we do have a podcast called Backstory. And whenever we bring on a guest on, we have this set of 7 questions that are kind of like rapid fire questions, don't need to think too much, that we like to ask each of our guests. So I have a few of these questions here that I like to throw back at you all. And I think I'm going to skip to the question of, can you all share what your guilty pleasure film is? So this is a film that is like, I guess, an irrational love that there's something about it that you just have to love it. And I'm just going to see who looks prepared here. Sorry, Gina, do you need to interpret that for?
감독님, 다른 사람들한테 말할 수는 없고 약간 부끄럽지만 정말 좋아하는 영화.
Okay, I think Hangnam is ready.
Oh, sorry.
이제 한국 영화라서 잘 모르실 것 같은데 스물이라고
네.
네, 그런 영화가 있습니다. 한국의 영화가 있습니다. 이병헌 감독 작품입니다.
It's a Korean film called 20 by director Lee Byung-hun, like Byung-hun Lee, that you might not know, but it's his guilty pleasure film.
Amazing. Also for folks listening, I'm going to try to make sure that we can drop all the film links in the Discord at a later time. But I think, thank you for sharing that. But like, Kevin, I think you also had a film ready.
Yeah. My guilty pleasure film is this Taylor Hackford directed thriller called Proof of Life from 2000 with Meg Ryan and Russell Crowe, that basically anybody only remembers now as the movie that broke up Meg Ryan's marriage to Dennis Quaid. Because I've been a proselytizer for this movie since I saw it in the theater when it first came out, because it's phenomenally well made and it's a lot of fun. And the only time anybody remembers it is I'm like, oh, it's the movie that got Meg Ryan divorced. And oh yeah, I never saw it.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that film either, but I'll have to add that to my list. And Indira, I think you look ready, so I'm gonna call upon you.
You've Got Mail by Nora Ephron.
Nice. And why is this your film?
I don't know. I just love it so much.
That's true. That's a good answer.
Like the pre-internet, like the early internet era. I think it's very interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Tahare, what is your guilty pleasure film?
Well, I'm a big fan of musicals, so I loved Bow Wow. So I think my guilty pleasure is Robin Hood Men in Tights, which is a little film adaptation of Robin Hood story, Mel Brooks. So
yeah, no, that's a classic. And then Linhan, do you mind sharing your guilty pleasure?
I can't think about a film, but I really like the original series of Tom and Jerry.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, nice choice. And sorry, since Gina, you're part of this conversation, I want to know if you have a guilty pleasure film.
Mean Girls.
Good answer. Good answer. Okay. And because of time, I'm going to have to wrap this up with, I think, the most controversial question ever asked live. If you all had to choose one thing, what would you choose? Rice, noodles, potatoes, or bread? Yes, it's very serious. We need to know.
감동, should I talk to?
Yeah.
감독님,
네.
쌀, 면, 빵, 감자 중에서 하나만 고르셔야 한다면.
제가 빵을 되게 좋아하는데, 근데 딱 진짜 하나만 있어야 된다면 라이스로 하겠습니다.
I really love bread, but it has to be one. It's going to be rice.
Oh my gosh. Well, hey, one for Team Rice. Linhan, are you ready to answer?
Yeah, I guess the real question you're asking here is whether I prefer sake, beer, vodka, or whiskey. Because that's like the more important question you're asking here.
Okay, fine. You can answer that, but you also have to answer my question too. So
Because one is made from
yeah.
ingredients. So I would say I like sake, so rice for me.
All right, good to know. And Tahiri?
Tahiri.
Sorry, Tahiri.
I'm also for Team Rice.
Wow. Kevin?
I'm gonna have to quadruple that because I would be thrown out of my Sri Lankan family if I did not pick rice.
Oh my gosh. Okay, Indira, please. You know the answer. You know what I'm looking for.
Well, will get my Indonesian card revoked, but I chose noodles. You have to taste Indomie. It's so good. You have to taste Indomie. I hope they have Indomie in Canada.
Yeah, we do. And thank you. That is the right answer. Actually, I'm curious what Gina and Jamie would choose, since we have some time.
I feel like as a Korean, I have to pick rice, but I love noodles.
Okay, very diplomatic. Very diplomatic.
I'm also on Team Rice as well.
Okay, well, for all you listeners, get on Discord and tell us what your pick is. Team Noodles, I know we're going to make it through this. But before we end off, I just want to thank all of our guests here. Thank you so much for sticking through this kind of like wacky Q&A. I know I threw many different kind of vibes here and there. So thank you all for making this Q&A session from wherever you're all joining. If you're looking to continue the conversation, please join in on our Real Asian Film Forum on the Discord. I have some extra questions that hopefully I can still ask the filmmakers there. And now to say my thank yous, I really want to thank Gina, our Korean interpreter, Jamie, our ASL interpreter, thanks to the Toronto Sign Language Interpretation Service, Mimi and Joe, our wonderful and magical digital producers, Jasmine, who was our staff moderator, and obviously everyone who attended this Q&A session. Real Asian runs until November 19th, which means we still have lots of time to catch films, listen to panels, and just join in on the discussion, whether live or recorded. So make sure to find out more information and check out the programming on realasian.com. And then on that note, thank you, everyone. Please take care and stay safe. Bye.